Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show, and it's Tuesday, September 24th, and it's gloomy again. I love it because I live far enough away from the coast, unlike Ed over there, that I normally wouldn't think that I had to worry about a hurricane making it this far inland, but it's coming up from the Gulf, and we're right in the path, so it's going to be interesting this week to see if we don't all wash away, especially with me less than 100 yards away from the river. Sounds good.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, how far are you, like, by the, the way the crow flies, away from the water where you're at?
Like from the actual ocean?
Yeah. I don't mean like from a creek.
If I... I mean, yeah, like if there was a, I mean, and there kind of almost is a road that goes directly from my house to the ocean, but if there was a straight line drawn from my house to the ocean, it's probably about 35 miles, if that, 35 miles.
Okay, so you're far enough inland, storm surge isn't going to be a thing.
Oh, yeah, no storm surge around here.
Okay, gotcha. See, that's fine. And that's one of the main reasons I never wanted to live on the beach, because I'm sure my flood insurance premiums would be astronomical.
Well, it's crazy because, like I said, like I was down the shore on Saturday. I always hear that that's only a Jersey thing. That someone will say I went to the beach on Saturday, but in Jersey we say I was down the shore. Anyway, but I digress. But anyway, I was down there and on this one barrier island that I hang out all the time, the side that's on the bay side, the street that is nearest to the bay, so right up to the houses, is flooded very, very often. And I mean, it was 75 degrees, brilliant sunshine, beautiful day on Saturday. It hadn't rained in weeks, and yet here's the street flooded because it's just a weird combination of when you have like a full moon and high tides and stuff like that those streets will flood out. So it's kind of interesting. So I understand about like flood insurance, and people like around here, they pay astronomical amounts of money for that. It's crazy. But that's why, like right on the other side of the bay, though, there's a town called Island Heights. It's called Island Heights because it's high. So even though it's like right on the bay, it just gradually from the water, it just gradually goes up till it gets to a height of probably at least 50, 60 feet above sea level, if not higher. So there you are. You're still right on the water. You have this gorgeous view. And like when Hurricane Sandy came through and some other nasty storms, they didn't have to worry about anything, So I think you can live close to the water and you can avoid the high flood insurance and everything as long as you plan appropriately and pick the right town.
Yeah, I keep seeing all these different videos of people, and I don't understand why people would even do this, considering the track record of people doing this. But they build, this is mainly up in North Carolina near the Outer Banks, places like Rodanthe.
Yeah.
They build these houses on the beach. I'm talking less than 30 feet from the edge of high tide, and they're up on these stilts, and you're like, oh, that's still a terrible idea. And I keep seeing all these houses just slowly floating into the sea.
It's wild. Yeah, it's funny.
You would think if you had enough money to build a house like that, that close to the ocean, because the cost of doing that is incredibly high.
Oh, it's crazy.
You would think they would just opt to not do it.
Yeah, but there's the allure. There's the romance, if you will, of being right on the water. You said about
it's such an alluring temptation to wake up and walk off my front porch and fall into the ocean, or wake up and have the ocean in my living room.
It is, though. It's funny because every time I go down there, I'm looking around. I'm looking for sale signs and seeing which house I'm going to buy once I hit it rich. It's just I know some people are just drawn to it, but it's true. Like if you look at where I hang out down there, usually Seaside Park, Seaside Heights, and they were. I mean, the flooding was crazy with Hurricane Sandy, and the boardwalk and all the rides and all that stuff were totally obliterated, but the houses were all fine. But then you go the next town up, which is called Lavalette, and it was crazy. I was driving through there afterwards, and there were blocks and blocks where you could just the only thing that was left was sand and the streets. Like it looked like when you see those pictures of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you could see, after the bombs were dropped, and you could see roadways, and that's it. That's what it looked like for blocks and blocks, where you saw street and sand, and the houses were all either in the ocean or in the bay. They were just gone. It was, and then you go a half a mile south, and it looked like nothing had happened. It's bizarre how that stuff goes on, but
Yeah, like I said, that's why I've got zero desire to ever live on the beach. And but here I am. I'm living 4 hours from the coast,
yeah,
and the hurricane decided to play peekaboo. It's coming up through the Gulf, and then what's great is right when it hits where I live, it's supposed to make this turn, so I get to sit, on the edges of the storm, usually where it's roughest, as it makes the curve to go even further inland. Hopefully it dies down by then, and we don't get much, and it's just some rain. Because we've had some years here where it's flooded so much, I have to keep a sump pump constantly running in the back room so it doesn't flood.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, it's just like a miniature garage, concrete floors and all that, so I don't have to, worry about water damage and things like that. But still, it gets rough, and I don't understand why people want to live on the ocean.
I'm telling you, there's just some people like, you mentioned in North Carolina, the town of Rodanthe, right? And you've seen, like, I will admit, I have seen the movie Nights in Rodanthe or whatever it was called. It was one of those Nicholas Sparks books that they turned into a movie. But there's a story about it's, and Richard Gere stars in it, and he's a writer. No, he's a doctor. I'm sorry. He needs to get away for a while from life and everything, and he rents one of those gorgeous, beautiful homes that are right on the beach in Rodanthe, and he stays there. But there's a hurricane coming, and the reason I mention that is because even with the storm coming and seeing the scenes and everything that they create with a storm coming up and just beating the hell out of the house and stuff, there's something that's, to me, appealing. Like, I would love to be, assuming it didn't get destroyed, I'd love to be in a house that's on the beach and getting the hell beat out of it by a storm. There's something very beautiful about it. I know it sounds bizarre, but
I'm really glad I didn't hire you for your common sense.
Listen, when Hurricane Sandy came up here, now by the time it got to me, you were looking at 70-mile-an-hour winds with an occasional gust up to 90 or whatever. We had a lot of flooding, a lot of damage. I went out without power for about 8 or 9 days. But at the height of it, overnight, it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I walked out into my yard and I just kind of stood out there. And I was just looking up and I was just amazed by it. I'm getting blown around all over the place and like that. Stuff's falling all around me. But there was just something so beautiful about all that power and everything. I don't know. There's something cool about it. But I don't mind being down the beach when there's storms brewing and such. I mean, like I said, as long as I'm not going to get hurt and whatever dwelling I'm in doesn't get totally destroyed. That would not.
Yeah, well, Murphy and I are well acquainted with each other, and his law is enacted all the time. So I avoid that as much as possible.
Well, then there you go. I mean, that would make sense,
I like the mountains far more than I like the beach. And I think the only reason I would ever go to the beach is there's not going to be hardly anybody else there, which is why I usually go in like December, January, February. Or if I felt like I needed to be there, like I was being called there for some ministry or some other purpose, right? And that's kind of the purpose of today's show is, following where you're led. A lot of times, the places we're being led to are not places we want to go.
Very true.
It's like, I really, really, really don't want to, move to the beach during hurricane season, but there's a ministry there calling my name. I figure God knows better than I do, so I'll go. That kind of thing. But, when I started my entrepreneurial journey back in 2018, early 2019, I swore up and down I was never, ever, ever, if I could help it, voluntarily work for someone else ever again. Right? I absolutely hate it. But I found myself, I feel like I'm being drawn to move. Now, I've been in this house for 10 years and I found a place that I really, really like. And I voluntarily applied for a regular job. I'm obviously not going to stop writing, right? It's just for the additional income. And the biggest motivating factor of me moving is the proximity to my parish. I can be there more. I can be better involved in my parish because I don't have 40 minutes worth of driving to get there. Yeah. And it may be the same distance, but the drive time is cut way down because it's a straight shot and I don't have to go through all these traffic infested areas in between where I live in the sticks to where the parish is in the sticks. But I wonder if I didn't voluntarily say, all right, I'm going to go do the thing that I swore I would never do again so that I can make this thing happen, because I feel like I'm being pulled to do more in my church. If life wouldn't just, I don't know, kind of suck a little more. Like, think of it this way. Like, if God is calling you to do something.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, I've got no desire to go and be a missionary in Africa, even though that's what God's calling me. I feel like God's calling me to do. I'm not going to do that because that's insane. I've got zero desire to go and risk getting malaria or shot or kidnapped or whatever, like Boko Haram. So I'm just going to do something else. I wonder if life would just be a little rougher because you didn't go where you were called. Because it seems like that's the case sometimes. Like, it's like, life is almost fighting back against you because it's like, bro, I'm trying to get you to go on the path you're supposed to be on and you keep resisting it. So that's why stuff is hard right now. And I've kind of experienced that before. So, my life got pretty miserable before I came to the church, even though I rejected several times of what was possibly a call from God to come home. And life started really, really sucking. And then life stopped sucking once I surrendered and prayed and started going to church and came into the church.
Something to be said for that.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, I wonder if a lot of these times because you see it all the time, like, hey, my life is kind of rough right now. Obviously, sometimes life's just going to be rough, even when you're right where you're supposed to be, because it's supposed to be rough. And that's why you're there for it to be rough. Right. But this is one of those weird philosophical things that I run through my head at 5 a.m. while I'm sitting there on the porch with my dog. Because I've got nothing better to do. It's 5 a.m. If you feel like you're being called by God to do something, but you don't do it because either, I don't know, whatever reason pops up. It could be, I'm afraid to make that change, or I'm reluctant to do it because it's going to be very uncomfortable, or whatever. if there isn't some kind of consequence that comes with that. And I'm thinking particularly about the book of Job, right? Or we could even look at Jonah. Hey, Jonah, go over here, talk to these people. Yeah, I'm going the other way. And then he's swallowed by a whale. And finally, he's like, okay, fine, I'll go. Okay, cool. I'll drop you off on the shore. I wonder if that's what worries me sometimes. I'm like, do I feel like I'm being called to do this? Because if I am, I need to start making some changes so that I can make this thing happen. Because I feel like if I reject that call, I'm going to go through some Job/Jonah stuff.
Well, it's a good thing you don't live close to the ocean, then you can avoid that whale.
Exactly. There's not going to be a whale getting me. If there is, oh, believe me, it's going to be, my luck, Murphy's Law and all, there'd probably be a whale swim up Tiger River over here.
It could happen. But I think that, it's an interesting thought, but I think the Job stories and Jonah stories, I don't think they happen all that incredibly often. I think that the way you will suffer, and it might be more like emotionally and spiritually, if you don't answer a call that you believe that you're getting from God, is if you actually reflect upon it and think about it. Because I know plenty of people who I think are being called to do more with their life, and especially as it pertains to God, and they just completely ignore that. And they have wonderful lives. They have great jobs, tons of money, everything, great vacations every year. Everything is going well all the time, and they don't suffer at all from not answering the call from God to get a little closer to Him. So, but as I said, but I think if they were to take time and actually think about and reflect upon the fact that they're getting called and they're ignoring it, then they might suffer some negative effects that way, which would prompt them to actually do what they should do. But we have free will, right? And I think that even when we're called to do something for God or His church, we can still exercise that free will. I would recommend doing what God has called you to do, but I don't think you're going to suffer tremendously, at least in the physical sense, if you don't answer it. I mean, listen, that's just my take on these things.
Right.
Because
I'm not thinking, oh, great. My life will turn into a country song, like wife left, dog died, truck broke, not all of that.
Yeah, no, I know. But by the same token, there are plenty of people who do answer the call, and their physical suffering never ends. Right. Nothing changes. They're still struggling to maintain their home and struggling to maintain their job and struggling to do this and that. Meanwhile, they're still giving every spare moment they have to God. So, because I always tell people, and this is my thoughts on this, that while God wants us, He wants things to go well for us, but He's not as invested in what goes on in the world. He's not as invested in that as we are. He doesn't concern Himself with that as much as we do on a day-to-day basis. So that's why it bothers me when people say, "Oh, God's punishing me," because they lose a job, because a loved one dies, because whatever, and they'll say God's punishing me or whatever. He doesn't work that way. We live in a world that is a broken world. We live in a world that has death and disease and famine and starvation and job loss and hurricanes and everything else. But God's not up there moving pieces around on a chessboard, making life more or less difficult for individual people on a daily basis. So, I say, my philosophy is that you do what God calls you to do because it's the right thing to do, and not because of whatever particular reward you're hoping to get out of it or whatever. You do. Now, I will say this though, especially this is coming from someone who does do a lot with the church and stuff like that, there is a joy that I get out of doing it and being involved in all the things that I'm involved with, which I don't think that I would have in my life if I didn't do those things. So there are benefits to doing what you're called to do, but again, but I think you do have the option to answer or to not. It just, listen, what is this all about? What are we supposed to be doing here? This is like our proving grounds for the next step, which is hopefully an eternity in heaven. So that's another really good reason to do what you're called to do, because you're paving that path to heaven. You're it's a narrow path, but you're paving it by how you respond to God's call on this earth, right?
Right. And I think that's more of what I mean. I'm not, I don't, like I said, I don't think my life's going to turn into a country song if I don't go where I feel like I'm being pulled to. But I do feel like there would either be some spiritual suffering or there would be an absence of spiritual gain.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I want to avoid. So,
absolutely.
And you know what? This may not be the route. I could be misinterpreting it completely, but it's just what I'm feeling called to do right now.
Yeah.
And man, I'll tell you what. For someone like me who has a real problem with authority, like I've had a problem with authority my entire life.
Ever since your days in Folsom Prison.
And I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I was there. Funny thing, I wasn't even an inmate. I was visiting.
Exactly.
But, I've had a problem with authority all my life. Mm-hmm. I've always rejected any kind of authority, whether it's at a job, whether it was my parents, whether it was school, whatever. That's why I'm an entrepreneur now.
Mm-hmm.
But it astonishes me, and it makes me wonder just like what the hell's going on and like who the hell is this guy walking around in my shoes? How easy I've found it to just completely submit to God.
Mm-hmm.
After I spent, nearly 40 years in open rebellion against any kind of authority. And I'm still like, hey, if you pull me over, do you know why I pulled you over? Because you need the money and you got bullied in high school. I'm still that guy. Right? when it comes to the cops or the feds or, some random, Karen, I don't know. But it's like, oh, the church says I have to do this. I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, because, it depends on where you are in your, spiritual maturity. It's kind of like, I compare it all the time, our physical maturity and our spiritual maturity. And if you think about it, like when you're a kid, mom and dad don't know anything. They're wrong about everything. You fight every single thing they ask you to do. You fight everything they tell you to do. You fight. And then you become an adult. And all of a sudden there's this great awakening. Oh, dad really knew what he was talking about. Mom had a clue, and then you think back and you're like, I wish I would have realized this when I was 15 or when I was 10 or when I was 8 or whatever it is, but you had to get to that physical maturity, that mental maturity. And it's the same thing when you talk spiritually. We fight against our God, our Father God, the same way we fight against our parents, our physical parents. I'm not going to do it. You're not going to make me. I don't want to go to church every Sunday. This is all nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point in your life, sometimes it's at 20, sometimes it's at 50, sometimes it's at 99. At some point, hopefully it does happen to you, that you get this realization that, oh, you know what? Maybe God does have a clue. Maybe he knows what's best for me. I'm not going to fight him anymore, and you submit. And I think that's what it is. So, that's I focus so much on trying to get people to maintain some sort of spiritual maturity. And that's why I work with the eighth graders, the kids that are getting ready for confirmation when it comes to CCD, because I want them to try to start working on that spiritual maturity and know that all these things that their CCD instructors for 8 years have been telling them that they have to do, it's not to bully them. It's not to just keep them busy. It's not just another person who you're not very fond of telling you what to do. There's a reason for it. There is a massive benefit you're going to get out of submitting to God and doing these things. And I started a new CCD class last night, and you talk about, like, when you were saying about how, or we were both saying about how you feel good when you follow God's plan. And last night was such a perfect example, because I was dreading going in there, because the last two eighth grade classes I had, I mean, they're kids, and I love them, but they were just rambunctious hooligans. They were just out of control all the time. I had to drag myself to go in there. I walk in there last night, and I will tell you, these are the most well-behaved, wonderful kids I've had in whatever it's been, 10 or 12 years of doing CCD. It's going to be a real pleasure working with these kids this year. And I think that's God's way of saying, you know what, you've been busting your butt. You're working hard to bring my message to teenagers. I'm going to give you a break this year. I'm going to give you a little gift. You're going to have some good kids to work with, some kids that are really going to listen and pay attention and learn. So, but anyway, getting back to my original point, is that you've got to get to a point of spiritual maturity, just like you have to get to a point of physical maturity. And once you do, you start reaping the benefits of it. So yeah, when you get called to do something, you do it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably what it was for me, at least. I had held on to this almost an extended adolescent kind of attitude towards, yeah, I know better, even though, he created the entire universe. But I've got a plan. I'm going to make it happen my way. We're doing it this way. And, kind of like every single teenager, I was a 30 odd year teenager, thinking God didn't know anything.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was like for me. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. You got to mature and humble yourself a little bit spiritually to just submit to where, God is calling you to be.
Yeah.
But it's still hard to do, right? It's still hard to be like, no. Especially if you've been like, taking care of business as a husband, a father, a man, for the majority of your life now. And you mean I have to do it his way? Yes, you do.
Yeah. No, it's very hard. I know a guy who, all the way up through teen and early 20s and stuff, and probably even to late 20s, was just loving life, but not in a good way. I mean, just partying and getting crazy, and and eventually led him to drinking and to alcohol and drugs and things like that. And thankfully, probably around 30ish or so, realized, what, I'm not going to survive living this way. I'm ruining my life. I'm ruining the lives of people around me, people that love me and care for me. I got to do something about it. And to his credit, even wound up spending some time in jail over it and stuff, but to his credit, really straightened his life out, and is now, he's married, got kids, got a great job. He's really doing everything right. But the one thing that's missing, and I'll remind him about it every now and then, I was like, where's God in your life? What part is he playing? Because whether you realize it or not, that's where you gained the strength to pull yourself out of the crap you would put yourself into. God was there all along. Maybe you didn't realize it, but that's where you got the strength. So it's great that you've now got this wonderful life and everything looks great. And, take your time, ease into it. But at some point, you got to bring God into the equation. So It's tough, because then what's the one ingredient? I tell people all the time, you want to. If people ask me, what does it take to be a good Catholic? I said the number one ingredient is humility. You've got to humble yourself. You've got to realize that there is something so much greater than me. And who wants to say that? Who wants to say that? Especially if you are in a situation like that where you have made yourself into, at least in this world, something pretty impressive, and you want to take the credit yourself. You want it, but at some point you have to realize that every single thing that you have and you do, even every single breath you take, is by the grace of God. If it wasn't for Him, none of this is possible. But that's, again, you've got to humble yourself to admit to that while you put in some work, but none of it's possible without Him. So it's tough, man. It's tough for you, tough for me, tough for everybody to get to that point.
Yeah, and I feel like my teenagers sometimes, I feel like my older kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, teenagers, I've noticed by the time they turn 16, their IQ drops to around freezing temperatures. And it doesn't return to normal, optimal levels until they're about 23, 24. And they go, yeah, if you're lucky. And they go, yeah, I realize that you happen to have done all of those stupid things that I was doing. And you were speaking from experience, not from just a position of what you perceive as your authority, Dad. No. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm smarter than you is because I've screwed up more than you. And I'm just telling you what happens when you make those screw ups. But they don't realize that till later. And that's kind of how I feel like sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I know. I didn't know everything and I thought I did. So,
yeah, I'm with you. It's interesting. And it's so funny. We repeat the same thing generation after generation after generation. Every kid thinks their
every set of parents goes, kids these days.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I never, I'm now at that point where I'm like, hey, you kids, get off my lawn. I never thought I was going to be that guy, but now I am.
I've been I've been that way since before I was a dad, so I don't know if that counts.
Not really, no.
But I don't even know who you are. Get out of my yard. We're real strict on property lines down here in the South.
Yeah. What's that on your ankle there, sir?
I like that. I didn't white people my daughter's education. Oh, I'm sorry. That was that one actress.
Yeah, right. But yeah, crazy stuff.
It's tough. It's also tough to discern whether or not you're being called to do something.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like, am I really being called to do something? I mean, that's why it takes so long to be a priest, right? You can't just wake up one morning like, hey, I think I would like to not have to pay any bills. I'll just be a priest.
Yeah, right.
I mean, hey, I get to live in the rectory. The food comes on a stipend. Hey, I'm good.
Seems like a nice life.
Seems like a nice life until you realize you're on call 28/9.
Exactly.
Not 24/7, 28/9. And then there comes the whole, you're spiritually responsible for other people.
Thousands of people usually.
Yeah, that's hard enough as a dad. I couldn't imagine being, a spiritual father as well in that sense. But no, it's hard to tell when you're called to do something. Is this something I'm being called to do? Or is this something I just really, really want to do?
That is the problem right there. Just deciphering between the two of those. That's huge. Yeah.
And there's no answer to that. I'm pretty sure someone's going, well, yeah, how do I know? I don't know. There's no real way to know.
There isn't, but I mean, and it, it sounds like such a cliched kind of answer, but you pray over it. And if you do that at some point, you have this awakening, you're like, oh, how dope am I? That's just something I wanted to do, not something I'm called to do. You know, and then by the same token, your resolve towards what you're being called to do gets stronger. And with prayer and prayer and prayer, you get to a point where you're saying, yeah, I don't think this is a lark. I don't think it's something out of bounds. I think I really am being called to do blank, whatever it is. But I mean, I think prayer is huge in that regard.
Yeah. And I think a better way of kind of stating that would be like the works that each of us are expected to do
Mhm.
are proportionate to the talents that we have,
Sure.
right? Whether these talents have been given by grace. Some people walk up, they're natural orators, or they're just very adept at, I don't know, carpentry, building houses, whatever it is. The works that you do are in proportion to that. If you're just a naturally gifted orator, then maybe evangelization, teaching, things like that are in proportion to the work that you should be doing and the things that you could be called to. God is not going to call you, hey, you're this, 3'8" IT guy. I'm calling you to be a competitive fighter.
Mhm.
Not going to happen. What you're called to do is going to be in line with what you're capable of doing.
Sure.
It's not going to be, well, Jeff, you're this, you have severe claustrophobia. You're being called to do HVAC under houses. No, I'm not. I'm not being called to do that. I promise you right now, I'm not, unless you want me to die in there. I say this as the guy that will still go slipping through caves, even though I'm terrified.
Well, sometimes you have to face those fears, don't you?
Yeah, I know. But I mean, think about it. Most of us try to figure out what God wants us to do, where he's calling us to go, who he wants us to be, what the things he wants us to do for his glory.
Mm-hmm.
And we hype them up so much to think that it's going to be something grand.
Mm.
God wants me to lead I don't even know what number we're on now. 9th, 10th crusade.
I have no idea.
Don't know. I don't know how many there were. I mean, I do, but it's been a while. So I don't know. 7?
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. No, you know what God wants you to do? God wants you to help out in the Bible study. God wants me to, what is that? The wealth gospel evangelists. God wants me to have a private jet.
Well, I mean, that's what Joel Osteen told me.
Yeah, no, that's not what he wants. But I think that's where a lot of people get confused too. God is calling me to do this, and you think it's some big thing. It's usually because you want to have the pride and the ego boost comes with that big thing.
Of course.
Right? It's like if you go, oh, I want my parish to rely on me more. And they go, we would love to have you help down in the food bank.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, that's not what I meant. I wanted to be like the guy you have come and give speeches. No. We need you in the food bank. Ah, crap. Okay.
Yeah, but then if you are really being honest and with yourself, your ego wants you to be up on stage giving talks, but in the course of things, which job is actually literally more important, and it would be feeding the poor. So even though you're doing it in the church basement and nobody's going to know about it and nobody knows who's doing it and all that kind of stuff, what you are doing is infinitely more important than the guy who's up there giving the talks and things like that. But and we don't see it that way because it's the guy that's up there giving the talks that's getting a pat on the back and people asking for his autograph when he writes a book about whatever and all that kind of fun stuff. And that's who we want to be. But listen, I say it all the time. God calls you to where He needs you to be. He puts you in whichever trenches you're supposed to be in, and we just have to be accepting of that.
Yeah. And I think most of it is, and I can only speak from the perspective of men, is that there is a little bit of pride that gets caught up in it, right?
Of course.
We don't want to be the low man on the totem pole. We want to be the guys leading. We want to be the guy, doing the organizing in the building and standing in front of the crowd that everybody looks to for direction.
Yeah.
But it's okay to be called to smaller things.
Yeah.
Because they're only smaller here doesn't mean they're smaller spiritually.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I feel like I'm being called to do at my church is nothing grand. It's help out the maintenance guy who does it voluntarily because he's just one guy.
Yeah.
Because he's there 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And he's making sure that the campus is in working order. There's a leak here. Oh, there's an issue with this or that or whatever it is. And he does it all by himself. Occasionally, he'll ask for volunteers when he needs, 7 or 8 sets of hands.
Mm.
But most of the time, he's like, I'm just got a lot and I'm getting it all done myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I feel like I would be an asset.
Yeah.
Nothing huge, nothing big. I'm not going to be like, all right, we're starting this giant international Catholic project. No, we're not doing that. I'm just going to go help the guy fix faucets or sprinklers or just walk the campus and make sure doors are locked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there are no, when you're serving God, there are no small jobs. There really aren't. I don't think.
Yeah.
Every one of them is important. So,
That's very true.
If the sinks are busted in the auditorium there, well, then you can't have the guy come in and give his big talk and get people excited about their faith, because you've got to have because the bathrooms are shut down. I mean, it's just every single thing that you do for God is important, and I don't think that he puts them on a level. I don't think he says, well, this guy's job is more important than this guy's, than this guy's, than this guy's. I think he just sees service to him as service to him. If anything, he might think the guy that's coming in at 10 o'clock at night after his long day of his regular job, who's fixing the sinks and stuff, he might think that guy is the most important guy on campus, because of the sacrifice that he's making to do what needs to be done, and he's doing it without any fanfare. So, yeah. So that's
right. The lowest among you will become the greatest among you.
Right.
I mean, imagine Christ, the savior of all mankind, washing some random hobo's feet. He did that.
But what did he say? He said, I came not to be served, but to serve. And so, okay, if Christ is showing us the way, and he's saying the way is that you serve, you don't wait to be served, then okay, you know what? There might be something to that. There might be a reason he's saying that. There might be a reason to follow him and do the same. So I learned that lesson many, many years ago, that you don't question. If you feel like you're called to do something for the church, for God, you do it. You just do it, and don't worry about the how's it going to make you feel, or who's going to see me doing it, and all the other nonsense. It's and a lot of other folks know that our church is looking for a new director of religious education. They still, I interviewed for it. They still haven't made their decision. I don't know what's going on with that, but you know what? I can't worry about that. They're short on religious ed teachers. And so even though I did a CCD class last night, I'm going to be doing 2 classes this on Wednesday night, and I'll be doing that because they said the sister who runs the program now, she said, I hate asking you this, but I know that you're the only person who won't turn me down. And I said, well, of course, sister, because if you're asking, that means that God's asking. And so, so I will be at the church every single night this week, running myself ragged because I'm being asked to. And that's, so there's no, I can't believe you need me there again, or how much is too much or anything like that. If God didn't think you could do it, he wouldn't ask you. Or if he didn't know that you could do it.
Yeah. And if it's something that you're not capable of, God's not calling you to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I'm going to be this, I don't know, whatever, something that's way out of your wheelhouse of skills, talents, and abilities. God's calling me to do it. I have to go do it. No, because if you go do that, it's going to suck and you're going to screw it up for other people. God doesn't want you to make things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, true. Very true.
Going to put you right where you need you.
He does, even if it's in the belly of a whale.
Which is why I don't go to the beach, just in case that's where he needs me.
Listen, if you go to the beach, your chances of being swallowed by a whale are like 1 in 3. It's not, it's not like a big deal. Just saying. From
1 in 3 aren't the greatest odds.
No, it's not. I don't know. I'm not good at math.
I'll tell you what. I've been going to Atlantic Beach and Myrtle Beach ever since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years ago, we rented this, nice private house right there by the coast.
Nice.
And we were out there. I woke up one morning. I'm dragging some stuff that we had left in the Jeep overnight, and I'm pulling it out, and I start hearing what it sounds kind of like those sirens for like tornado warnings that they test every Saturday.
Yeah.
I think, no, today's not Saturday for one. I had no idea what it was. I'm like, it's in my head. I'm thinking it sounds like a whale or whales, but there's never ever any whales down here, like ever, at least this close to the shore. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't think nothing of it. Went back inside, told my wife what I heard, but she walked out. She didn't hear anything. Went back inside, come back out later, getting the kids in, all loaded up because we're going to go find something to do.
Mm.
And my wife's just kind of scrolling through her phone and goes, "Oh, there were whales here this morning." I'm like, really? And it was like on the local news, rare whale sighting just off the coast of by Barefoot Landing. I'm like, oh, could have gone down there and seen whales. It was only 100 feet away.
There you go.
It's somebody making noises.
We get whales and dolphins here all the time. It's great when you're sitting on the beach and you see them out there cruising on by. It's fun.
Yeah, just not my thing, man. Now I do want to take Ernie on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to do that. I'm still just not going to live at the beach.
All right. Well, when you come up here, I'm gonna take you and to some sites, and maybe we'll even see some brown pelicans. That's fun too. In fact, one of my favorite.
I don't know if that's a euphemism or not in Jersey.
No, it really brown pelicans. In fact, there's a little tiny island that, as you're going over the causeway into the barrier island I usually go to, you make a brief, tiny little stopover in Pelican Island, and then you go onto the thing. So we got a lot of people are shocked to hear that, but we have brown pelicans here too in Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fun when you see them when you're sitting on the beach and they go flying by. They're pretty cool looking.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go and see some brown pelicans with you.
I'm telling you, it'll change your life. But when you see the whales breach, that's probably the coolest thing ever. Those things they're monsters. They're huge, but they're really good.
All right. Well, here we are.
Yes, we are here.
We got 10 minutes and we didn't run over. I want to see what you brought today, man.
Well,
that was your cue.
I figured you're being very presumptuous there, assuming that like I always have something. Well, but you're also lucky because so what we are looking at today is this is get that up towards the camera. This is a bronze coin, and you'll notice on this side there is a cross, and on the opposite side, or what we would call the front or the obverse, is it's a little beat up, but there is an image of Christ Pantocrator that's on there. So this is a bronze coin that is from the Byzantine Empire, and this one is from during the reign of Nicephorus III. So he was only emperor for a very brief period of time, from 1078 to 1081 A.D. But this would have been one of the coins that was minted while he was in there. And what is there to say about this other than, I mean, if you've never studied the Byzantine Empire, or which is sometimes also referred to as the Eastern Roman Empire, give it a look-see. I mean, it actually lasted much longer than the actual Roman Empire, and it lasted until it was over. They were overrun by the Ottomans in 1400 and something or other. But it has an incredible history. Especially, in that area of Turkey where you've got what used to be Byzantium and then Constantinople, and then modern day, what is Constantinople now? Istanbul, right?
Turkey.
Yeah, Istanbul, Turkey is the city. So, but this is a bronze coin from that era. This one's, the little beat up. You can't even really see the facial features on Christ, but you can see the halo. And you can kind of see the Bible, or that would be in his hand down there. And I love that it has the the cross on the other side there, and actually the details on that are pretty cool, considering this is a 1,000-year-old coin. But so this is just from my collection, from the archives, because I do, I'm a coin collector as well as a Catholic collector, so I like having coins from the Roman Empire, from the Byzantine Empire, I've got a bunch of coins from the Papal States, which is pretty cool. So most of those from like the 1830s up until the 1870s or so. And all they did was that they always had whoever the Pope was at the time that the coin was minted, they put his face on the coin. So that's kind of cool. So, but this is a pretty neat little coin. I love this kind of stuff. And, it's the same thing with so much of the stuff that I collect, is that you wonder, I kind of put my faith, I wonder who had this, who used it to buy food or grain or whatever. And, and how many millions, not millions, but probably at least hundreds of different pockets that this went through, and how many different things it was used to pay for, and all that kind of neat stuff. But that's what we have today. We have a coin from the Byzantine Empire. I got a few of those that are around. I have to dig up the others, because some of them, I have a few of them where you can actually see Christ very well, and there are some that have like the Blessed Mother and the Infant Christ and things like that. The Byzantine Empire always had saints and Christ and images like that on their coins, for the most part.
Do you have any of them that have been kind of cut and chipped off?
Oh yeah, no, I don't. The next thing I want to pick up, actually, and they're actually a little easier to find, they call them cup coins, and they're bigger than that, and they do have an image imprinted in the center of them, but they're kind of shaped like cups. They're kind of neat.
Oh, okay.
Bronze, and they call them cup coins. But
no, the reason I was asking is because that's how they would make change. Most of the time, it was like, okay, we're going to cut a little piece of this coin off. And so finding cut coins is that's pretty good because that it was actually used. Yeah. Whereas something like that, chances are 99% chance that it was used. But there's another big chance that it was minted and then some dude dropped it in the dirt and then somebody just found it later. Like never actually used it for anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do. I have, actually, it's funny because I do have some Spanish reales. The coins and that's where you get to turn pieces of 8 because they would cut it into 8 pieces and give you change that way. And I do have some of those where I have pieces of 8, and I have some larger ones that just a small piece chunked out of them, which is so it is kind of cool the way they used to do things. And I think the way we do change now is a little bit more sophisticated. But
now there's just a little button you press on the pad that asks you if you want to round up.
Yeah, right. And it's funny because, when you talk about coins, things like that, if you look at your quarters and dimes, they have ridges on the edges of them. And goes back to when they were actually made out of silver. Because people used to shave pieces of it off, making the coin a little bit smaller and hoping no one would notice. And then they'd save all those shavings and melt it down, and they'd have extra silver. But we still haven't gotten rid, even though we don't use silver anymore in the coins, we haven't gotten rid of the ridges because it's just tradition at this point. And it costs more to make a penny than a penny is worth. It costs about 3 cents to make a penny.
Yeah, I know.
That's why they're trying to get. Yeah. Canada got rid of them back in 2012. There's no pennies in Canada. Well, I mean, there's pennies around, but they don't mint them anymore.
Yeah, no reason to.
There is no reason to. So I do have a stockpile of 2012 Canadian pennies if you're looking for any.
You know what? I was looking around and I misplaced all of my Canadian pennies. And I'm glad to know that there's a reliable source of them. What are you talking about?
It's a part of history. And at some point, those things are going to have some value. I'm telling you. But that's the story. I love the Byzantine Empire. I'm a Byzantine guy, so I have to love the Byzantine Empire. It's just, and again, like I said, it's fascinating history. If you get to exchange.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Canadian pennies. I'm like,
well, not the Byzantine pennies. But Canadian pennies. I'm telling you, if you're looking for investment, if you can find them at a reasonable rate, get yourself some 2012 Canadian pennies. All right, that's all I'm saying. And you'll find that some are magnetic and some are not. So get some of each. That's just my helpful hint. Because
I have no idea where the hell this conversation just went.
Well, we were talking about coins, if you remember. So
yeah. All right. Well, thankfully, we're at the end of the show before this gets any worse.
We don't have to punish anyone any further.
Yeah, I'm like, people are listening right now. What the hell is that talking about? He needs a nap.
Well, it is going to be about that time, but also in the collection is, you hear in the Bible, the widow's mite, and that's an actual coin. And I've got a couple of those. Yeah, those are pretty neat. The widow's mite, how she swept the whole house looking for the one lost coin.
Yeah.
But she did so she could donate it, which was wonderful. But
nice. Good story.
Good story.
But all right. We are here at the end of the show. So I'll thank you all for watching, listening, liking, and sharing. And we'll see you tomorrow.
We certainly will. God bless everybody.